And joining me now is Democratic Senator-elect Adam Schiff of California. Senator-elect Schiff, welcome back to Meet the Press. Congratulations.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Yeah, great to have you here. Let's start off by talking about Matt Gaetz. You just heard me talking with Senator Schmidt about this. He's obviously no longer in contention to be Attorney General, but there's still this report swirling around him. The House investigation, the House Ethics Committee has launched this investigation. Details of it started to leak out this week to some members on Capitol Hill. But do you think that report should be made public?
I do think it should be made public. I don't think that when someone decides to avoid the public accountability, they simply leave Congress and make it all go away. The taxpayers paid for that analysis and that report. I think they have a right to see it.
Do you think it will be made public? Do you have any indication?
I don't know. It seems like on a party line basis, Republicans are saying, no, the public has no right to see this. And what's more, we don't want the public to see this. But it underscores to me why the president's lack of background checks for his nominees is flawed. He may have still decided to nominate Matt Gaetz, but if they did a thorough vetting, he may have decided not to. That vetting process, having the FBI review potential nominees, it's not only to protect the public interest, it's to protect the president-elect's interest, to make sure that he's not embarrassed by nominating someone like Matt Gaetz. So I think it shows a flaw in the process that he even got nominated. And, you know, perhaps with the respect to Hegseth as well, had a thorough investigation been done, it might have influenced the president-elect's decision to nominate him in the first place.
Let me ask you big pictures. Obviously, President-elect Trump has now said he wants to pick Pam Bondi to serve as his attorney general. He has swept the battleground states. He won the popular vote. Republicans have control of the House and of the Senate. Do you think that the president-elect should have his picks confirmed?
Well, I think the president has a right to nominate anyone who's qualified, who has good judgment and good character. It doesn't mean he's guaranteed Senate approval of whoever he nominates, and some of these nominees are deeply problematic. I'll be interested in the confirmation process. Will Pam Bondi continue to tell the big lie even under oath? Is she going to continue to say that the Justice Department should be prosecuting prosecutors who brought valid evidence before a grand jury found probable cause to believe Donald Trump committed crimes? That's not a basis to go after them. So she's going to have to answer tough questions. Tulsi Gabbard concerns me a great deal, that someone who has echoed Kremlin talking points, someone who has appeared to make common cause with someone like Bashar al-Assad, who gasses his own people, someone who has no experience whatsoever, not even on the Intelligence Committee in the Congress, should be running those agencies. So they're going to have tough questions to answer.
Senator-elect Schiff, is there anyone on this list who at this very moment you think you could vote yes on, you could support?
Well, you know, for example, I think Marco Rubio is enormously well qualified for the job for which he's been nominated. I still want to ask questions. I'm not going to completely prejudge even him, but he's unquestionably qualified, and there are others as well. But some really stand out for the risk they would present to the American people.
So right now, Senator Rubio would have your vote as a yes?
Well, I'm strongly inclined that way. I don't want to prejudge completely because you never can tell what comes out in the vetting process, but he's unquestionably qualified.
Let's talk about your former colleague who you just mentioned, Tulsi Gabbard. She's been picked as Director of National Intelligence. Just last week, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz said Gabbard was, quote, likely a Russian asset. Do you share those concerns, or is that overstated?
Well, I wouldn't describe her that way. But what I would say this, she has certainly echoed talking points for the Kremlin. She appeared to have taken Putin's side when he invaded Ukraine. And, you know, her fondness for Bashar al-Assad, someone who is gassing his own people, calls her judgment deeply into question. So here you have someone with very questionable judgment and no experience. That's not a great recipe for running the agencies. And the problem is, if our foreign allies don't trust the head of our intelligence agencies, they'll stop sharing information with us, and that makes our country less safe. So I have profound concerns about her.
Well, speaking of foreign allies and adversaries, I want to play something that President-elect Trump said about you when he was a candidate. He called you, quote, more dangerous than foreign adversaries. Take a listen and get your reaction on the other side.
The enemy from within, in my opinion, is more dangerous than China, Russia, and all these countries, because if you have a smart president, he can handle them pretty easily. I got along great with all. I handled them. But the thing that's tougher to handle are these lunatics that we have inside, like Adam Schiff, Shifty Schiff.
Senator-elect, when you hear that language, how concerned are you that you will be targeted by President-elect Trump and his second administration?
Well, that's dictator talk. That's how autocrats talk. They want to make their political opposition an enemy, describe them in those terms. But look, I'm not concerned about myself. I'm going to do my job. I'm not going to have his threats intimidate me from doing so. But anytime you have someone, particularly someone who's going to become president of the United States, fawning over dictators, emulating their language, attacking the press, undermining our institutions, yeah, we should be concerned about it, because at the end of the day, it means that the American people will suffer. The American people, I think, voted on the basis of the economy. They wanted change to the economy. They weren't voting for dictatorship. So I think he is going to misread his mandate if that's what he thinks voters chose him for.
Let me ask you, because there is an effort underway to dismiss both the federal and the state cases that President-elect Trump is facing. Do you believe that that is appropriate, again, now that he has won office, now that he is going to be in the White House again? The Supreme Court has obviously said that he has immunity for all official acts once he's in office. Do you think these cases should be dismissed?
I don't. I think the sentencing and further proceedings in the New York case should be deferred until after he leaves office. And likewise, I think further proceedings in the two federal cases should be deferred until he leaves office. But they should not be dismissed. A jury of Donald Trump's peers found him guilty. He's no less guilty because he won an election. There were two grand juries who found probable cause to believe Donald Trump committed federal crimes. Those cases shouldn't go away simply because he was elected. The presidency is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. Instead, they should be postponed for further proceedings until after he leaves office.
All right. I want to turn now to the results of the 2024 election and talk a little bit about what you think may have gone wrong. You joined this program a month before the election, and you talked about Vice President Harris's chances of winning. Take a look at this.
By the standards of today, I think she can win overwhelmingly. Given how divided the country is, overwhelming may be winning by 100,000 votes or 80,000 votes in these key battleground states. I think that's within her capacity to do. So I think we are well poised to win this thing, but it is still scary close.
Why do you think that Kamala Harris didn't win and win overwhelmingly?
I think Joe Biden's decision to step aside and pass the torch was the right decision. It gave us a chance to win. It didn't give us a guarantee. And I thought she could win. And I thought she could win in all the battleground states. But ultimately, what we saw both in this country and around the world was a very strong anti-incumbent wave that took out both progressives and conservatives. And our party became associated with the status quo. And that was too much to overcome. I think the principal issue is the economy, and over years and even decades, it's gotten more and more difficult for people working full-time to make a living. And until we resolve that challenge to the economy, we may find the presidency is easier to get than it is to keep.
You know, you talk about President Biden's role in all of this. Speaker Emerita Pelosi said that he actually should have stepped aside sooner, that could have made a significant difference in the outcome of this election. Do you agree with the Speaker Emerita?
Well, she has far better political instincts than I do. I think it's difficult because had we gone to a competitive primary, for example, what would the results of that primary been? How ugly and divisive and chaotic would it have been? Very hard to tell in advance. But I do think the Democratic Party has to recognize the challenge we have, which is for too many millions of battleground voters, working people, they don't think we represent them. And we have to make that case anew.
But Senator-elect, do you believe that President Biden bears some responsibility for staying in too long?
Look, I think the entire Democratic Party bears the responsibility, myself included, and the former president, and the mounted an effective campaign, and you have to give him credit for that. But the challenge that we have is we need to put forward a bold vision for how we're going to move the economy forward, make the economy work for every American. To me, the existential question is, if you're working hard in America, can you still earn a good living? And too many people doubt that that's possible.
Before I let you go, I do want to ask you about what happened on Capitol Hill this week. Congresswoman Nancy Mace introduced legislation to restrict transgender people from using bathrooms that align with their gender identity. Mace said the move was in response to Congresswoman-elect Sarah McBride, who's, of course, set to become the first openly transgender member of Congress. McBride has called this an effort to just distract from the real issues, but Johnson has actually been supportive of Nancy Mace. Where do you come down? How do you see this?
I think it is a distraction. We have bigger challenges ahead of us, including the most immediate, which is we don't want the government to shut down. We don't want to default on our debt. We should be focused on those problems.
All right. Senator-elect Adam Schiff, thank you so much for being here in person. Really appreciate it. Good to see you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.